What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Adventure Outpost. It is late night at the Outpost again, and with the release of Stephen King's latest adaptation, Firestarter, this past week, I thought it would be a great video tonight to dive into all of the rankings for all of the Stephen King adaptations that I have seen. He is one of my favorite writers of all time. There is only one or two books of his that I still have yet to read that I've missed out on. I've read the majority of this man's work. I have seen the majority of the big screen adaptations of his works that have come out. So I thought in today's video, it would be a good idea to just run down all of my favorites. And we're going to dive right into it, starting with my least favorite Stephen King adaptation, probably everybody's least favorite Stephen King adaptation. I've yet to find somebody who's really like put this into the middle or even upper pack of his adaptations, and that is Dreamcatcher. This was a really hard movie to make. I feel like, having read the book, it's a very bizarre book, especially coming off of the time where Stephen King, I think he was just getting over the car accident that he was in that was leaving him addicted to painkillers again, and he was weaning himself off those drugs and getting clean again, and this book was the result of that. And in book form, it's interesting because in book form, you know, you're picturing it in your head, and it leaves, when it has his style of writing, it's much more easier to digest than when you've made it into a big screen adaptation that's kind of all over the place because you have to cut out portions of the book to make it work as a movie. And this is just one of those ones that does not work very well as a movie. There's interesting parts in it. I think all the actors are really good in it. There's a lot of people in it. You got Morgan Freeman, Thomas Jane, Jason Lee, Damian Lewis, Timothy Olyphant, Tom Sizemore, Donnie Wahlberg. It's made by Lawrence Kasdan. Like, this should be a slam dunk, and yet it's not. It's written by Lawrence Kasdan and William Goldman, two phenomenal screenwriters. So it's insane to me that this doesn't work. It has still been a long time since I've watched this, but this one has always been at the top of the heap of my least favorite of his. But I might have to go back in and give it another chance now, reading over all these people and seeing who's written it. And maybe it's time to go back in and see with our older lenses, maybe there's some more value there. Coming in right behind it is a movie I don't yet own. I did see it in theaters, so I'm going to have to buy it eventually, but it was not one that I was racing out to stores to get, and that is The Dark Tower. I had been waiting for someone to try and adapt that book for a while. I really do. I enjoy some of the Dark Tower books. It's a very insane 7 books to really dive into. It was one of those ones that it was like, there's no way they can ever actually make it into a movie. It gets way too insane. And what I mean by how insane as it gets is, as you get into later books, Stephen King, the author, becomes a character in his own story. The characters in the book that he's writing come across him, the author. It's batshit crazy. It's just no way you can make it into a movie faithfully without changing lots of shit, and that's what they tried to do, and it is just all over the place. I mean, Idris Elba as the gunslinger was an inspired idea, and even Matthew McConaughey as the villain. It's another bold choice, but I think where they messed up was trying to cram too much in instead of just doing the first book. And trying to deviate too much from it. They should have just stuck with doing the first book and seeing how that turned out. We're never going to get there. I don't think anyone's ever going to get a shot at doing these. We're never going to get to that point where we could have actually seen them hire Stephen King to play himself in the later movies. That would have been something to behold. Up next is the remake of Pet Cemetery with, what the hell is his name? Jason something. I can't think of his name. Damn, that sucks. He's in so much stuff. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, the terrible Terminator movie, and I can't think of his last name right now. I apologize, sir. But I think there's a pretty big name actress in it too, and I can't think of her name. That's how bad that movie was to me. I've just forgotten all about it. It's another one I will have to buy eventually because I did see it in theaters, but I'm in no rush to go do it. It's just a movie that just like didn't need to be made. The book, it's one of my favorite Stephen King books, so obviously I'm very sentimental about that book, so I don't like you fucking with it too much. And they went very bold and in a way different direction in the end of that movie, which I'm not against. Like, if you can make it work in the movie, sure, you could change whatever you want. I'm cool as long as it works within the context of the movie you're making. But this one just kind of, everything was just all out of left field. It was never something that I was like particularly invested in. It just always felt like a slog just from the get-go, which is a shame because I think somewhere in there, someone's going to take a shot at Pet Cemetery and really knock that book out of the park. Up next is Secret Window with Johnny Depp. This is a fine little psychological thriller. It's not terrible. It's not amazing. It's one of those ones that's just kind of like falls into the middle of mediocrity where it's just a movie you've seen. I think what helps elevate it is that it is written and directed by David Cope, who is a phenomenal screenwriter, did Jurassic Park. He's done Panic Room. There's so many movies in the 90s and mid-2000s that has his stamp on it. He's also an author in his own right now who he's put out one book so far. He's got another one coming out this year, which I'm super excited for. So he helps elevate the material on here on what could have been just like a really terrible adaptation and help makes it passable. Up next is the remake of Carrie with Chloe Grace Moretz. It's another movie very much like the remake of Pet Cemetery, where it's just, there's just no need for it to exist. It doesn't add anything over the original that makes it worth existing. It's just one of those ones that's just got updated special effects and just looks cleaner because it's made with newer technology. But, you know, it's very lackluster with its ability to adapt something interesting out of the story or try and do something new and unique. It's just basically just putting a new sheen of paint on an old, worn building. And up next is the remake of Firestarter. Spoiler alert for everybody, the original Firestarter will not be making this list. It is one of the few Stephen King adaptations I haven't seen of the bigger works. There's plenty of like the smaller works that they did that I haven't seen, and we're just going to ignore those. We're talking about the big screen adaptations here. But yeah, that original is one of the few ones that I've missed out on. So I hope maybe that this one would have struck a little higher for me, having not seen the original and only read the book. But dear God, was this movie way off the mark. It is so cliche ridden and just tough to get through. You know you're in for a rough ride when a 90-minute movie makes you feel that it's like 2 hours long. It's never a good sign. Zac Efron does the best with what he can. He's fine in it. I think he did a decent job. Some of the visuals are really cool in the movie. I like the visual that he does with his face every time, where his eyes bleed every time he uses his powers. But for the most part, the movie is just a cliched nightmare. It's just stock villain that you learn nothing about. It's brutal. It's painfully boring for the first 2 acts, and it only really kicks into gear for that final act. Which is where we'll get to our 2 positives. The first one is the music. John Carpenter does the music on this movie, and it elevates that movie so much better. Like the music in it's fucking phenomenal. And 2 is that finale. The finale is absolutely bonkers. And I wish the rest of the movie could have slowly built that momentum to that part, because maybe we would have had something good there. But this is a movie that's very one and done. Obviously, I will have to buy it because I watched it in theaters, but this is one I wouldn't mind owning just so that I can watch that finale whenever I feel like it. I can just cut right to that part and just enjoy. Up next is 1408. It's another neat little psychological thriller. This is the one that only ranks as high simply because of the elevated performances in it. Samuel L. Jackson and John Cusack really do their all to sell the shit out of this movie. It has some neat visuals also. The storyline is solid. It's nothing like it's gonna break the bank. It's another one of those movies that it's like, you'll be like, yeah, it's a movie I saw. It wasn't the worst. It wasn't the best, but it was solid. And you know, that's probably better than this movie ever had a chance of being. So it's pretty good for that one. Then up next is the original Carrie. It's a decent movie. I do like the movie. I do tend to enjoy the older Stephen King movies simply because it has that very subtle practical effects work in it that really had to like have good story to help elevate it. I think Sissy Spacek really sells the shit out of that movie as Carrie, and the original ending with that movie with all the blood being spattered on her just looks so much better than it did in the remake. The remake, it just looked too like, I don't know, like I'm sure it was real, but like it just didn't look real. Like I don't know if it's just the way they shoot movies these days that it's just like all this stuff just looks too video gamey, or like it just looks like too rendered. I don't know, but there's just something about those 70s and 80s style of filmmaking, just like the way everything just looked super, just much more realistic than it actually probably was. But other than that, it's a fine movie. It definitely elevates past these smaller ones that we've seen simply because of the performances and the old school filming techniques, but it's still leagues below some of the other stuff we're going to get to. Up next is a horror movie that scared the shit out of me as a kid, but as an adult is very silly, and that is Children of the Corn. It's absolutely silly premise that like it blows my mind. Like when you watch movies as an adult that scared the crap out of you as a kid, and you're being like, oh, that's what I was scared of. I was a pussy. There's so many of them. Although the Candyman is still to this day, the original Candyman is still to this day. That movie will always scare the shit out of me. I don't care how old I get. That movie absolutely decimated me as a child, and I will never get over that. This one though I was able to get over because it's painfully silly as an adult. I didn't even realize it was fucking Linda Hamilton in this movie too. At one point I was like, oh shit, look at that. Wild. It's a really silly horror movie. It elevates itself up to this simply just because of the shock value of it. It feels very much like an exploitation film almost in a sense. But yeah, it's a solid movie. Ignore all the ones that came after it. Even though some of them have just like random, it's always funny when you see those movies that have like the random stars in it, because like I think like Children of the Corn 4 or 5 is the one that has like Charlize Theron in it. You're just like, oh shit. I mean, everyone has to get their start somewhere. That's wild. Up next is the original TV adaptation film, It. It's very wild fucking movie. For the longest time, this is the one you grew up on. For anyone who grew up before the new ones came out, this was our It, and what a fucking it was. Tim Curry as Pennywise, iconic. This movie simply ranks up this high above all these other ones because he is fucking iconic as Pennywise. Like, he is unreal good and mixes between horror and campy just so well. Everybody else is just fine. There's not really much to do with like the rest of like the humans, even though you got John Ritter in there, and then all these other people that you have no idea who the fuck they've ever been in. It's kind of, although I think one of the kids, when they show the kids in this one, I think one of them's Seth Green, if I'm not mistaken. It's possible. It doesn't say anywhere on the back, but I'm pretty sure one of them's Seth Green. But for the original thing of trying to adapt this insane tome, they did a pretty good job for it. This is much better than an 80s movie about it trying to adapt a 1,000-page book into a movie. It's much better than we could have ever hoped for at that time. After that is the only Netflix Stephen King movie that I've seen. I haven't seen 1922 yet, so we won't see that on this list, but it is Gerald's Game. It's another movie that is way better than it had any right being, and that is all thanks to Mike Flanagan. That guy is a fucking genius at building tension and psychological thrillers and horror. He is just an absolute fucking maestro. This is a movie, like, I remember when I read that book, I was like, and then they announced that they were going to do a movie of it. I was like, how are you going to do this into a movie? Like, it mostly takes place within her mind, and she's just going crazy. I was like, there is no way you can make this and it be good. And Mike Flanagan was like, hold my beer, I'm going to do it. And god damn it, he did it. The crazy son of a bitch did it. And it's good. The style of it is fucking creepy as hell. He does a really good job with the setting and some fucking really like interesting effects. It's a really good fucking movie. And you should definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. All the rest of these from now, we're getting into the good stuff now. One of my favorites of the old school Stephen King adaptations, and it is the original Pet Cemetery. I know it's kind of hard to see because it's got this glossy sheen on it. But we've got this Mondo fucking steelbook for Pet Cemetery. It's fucking gorgeous. This movie is fucking creepy. I love old movies, especially old horror movies, because with the usage of the practical effects that they utilize, it helps make the movie have this more unhinged creepiness to it, because it's so like unnatural, but it's still within the law of our physics because it's built practically. So it's like there, it takes up the living space instead of it just being like something that's computer graphicked in afterwards. So a lot of the stuff in this movie really hits for me and really helps make it like super creepy and elevate the material simply because of their old school technology. It's such a unsung art, that old school technology, and that helps make Pet Cemetery a fucking fantastic Stephen King adaptation. Up next is the movie The Dead Zone, starring Christopher Walken. It is a really good, I don't know if it came out in the 70s or the 80s, but it's another really good old school Stephen King adaptation, very stripped down from the book. The book is very episodic in nature, where it's just like kind of like a very sprawling story following this guy, but that would make for such a long movie. So it was a very inspired idea of the writer to really narrow it down to like 3 pivotal points in the life of this man to like really build that story, and it helped make the movie have much better through line than in the book. In the book it's fine, because in the book you can pick it up whenever you want, read a few pages, and it's much more easier to get that narrative. But in movie form, when you got to keep everything succinct and moving, and you want to keep it, not too fucking long, this was a great way for them to condense it, to make it like just under a 2-hour movie, but still retain that narrative thematic element of it throughout. I think they did a really good job with it. David Cronenberg, really good work on that. Martin Sheen as the like Trump-esque senator who's just rolling through that Christopher Walken's got to take down is a fucking riot. Everything about the movie is really good. It's a really good fucking adaptation. Up next is Christine, another movie that really good old school Stephen King adaptation. Like, I think the 70s and 80s were the time for fucking Stephen King adaptations. Like, they had great use of old school practical effects. It really goes a ways with me. I'm a very big fan of that old school style. This movie is a lot of fun. It's so silly. It doesn't take itself too seriously. I love watching the arc of the really nerdy kid as he progresses into this just like douchebag dude because of his car. It's such a funny progression to watch, and the finale where they just have to fight the car to the death is just so absurdly amazing. It's phenomenal. I love movies like this. Up next was It Chapter 2. This is a solid movie. It's the work on it is phenomenal. I think everyone as the adults were really freaking good. Bill Hader especially, James McAvoy, Jessica Chastain. Everybody on this is really just freaking playing into the A game. I think where this movie falters is in trying to be too big. I guess they didn't realize that Chapter 1 would be such a juggernaut that it was, that they felt the need to shoehorn the kids back into it. But I think that's where the movie suffers, was them constantly having to go back and show the kids again, where it really should have been just Chapter 1 is the kids, Chapter 2 is them as an adult now. We didn't need to constantly go back and then watch the kids constantly have their thing with it again that revitalizes the adult's memory. It was just unnecessary. I felt this movie would have been much better stripped down to just the adults coming back into this world and having to face Pennywise again once and for all. Still a good movie though overall. There's a lot of really good creepy stuff in this movie that still really helps elevate it to be a really good Stephen King adaptation. Up next is an insane thrill ride of a Stephen King adaptation, and that is The Mist, the first of 3 Frank Darabont Stephen King adaptations to drop onto this list. And just because it's coming in last place doesn't mean that it's bad. This movie is a trip. It is just a very different movie from his other adaptations. This movie is an insanely entertaining creature feature about a government facility where a mist breaks loose that is from another dimension that covers the entire God knows how much, and these people are stuck in a supermarket trying to figure out what the fuck is going on, and all these freaking creatures start attacking. It is such an entertaining ride, and then the ending, I won't say it because I'm sure the people that have seen it have known, and if you haven't, watched this movie and you will understand the ending of this movie is one of the best endings of any movie of all time. It is a fucking gut-wrenching punch to the stomach. That's how freaking good this movie is. Up next is Rob Reiner's classic Stand By Me. It's a very different type of Stephen King movie. It's just a coming of age story, and it's just an interesting, and it's such a good thing to see of just how verbose and how much just room Stephen King has to work in. Like, he can do anything. Like, detective thrillers, yeah, he's got them. Coming of age story, yeah, he's got them. Horror, the dude's an absolute fucking legend. The man is just so versatile. He can do it all. Stand By Me is a great coming of age story about a bunch of kids that are going to find a dead body off into the woods. It's just a phenomenal movie. All the kids are great in it. Jerry O'Connell, Will Wheaton, River Phoenix, Corey Feldman, Kiefer Sutherland as the bully in this movie is that dude. He commits, man, and everything he was in. I just watched A Few Good Men the other day, and he is fucking so good in that movie. He is a phenomenal actor, and it's a shame we haven't really seen him in much lately. I would love to see him on the big screen again. One of my favorite Arnold movies drops next with The Running Man. I know this movie is vastly different from the book, but I still love it nonetheless, simply because it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He just drops one-liners one after the other. It's a great sci-fi story. It's over the top, it's silly, it's violent, it's everything you want in a movie. It's just pure entertainment, and I fucking love it. There's just so much good stuff in this movie. It's one of those ones I can watch anytime. I think from here on out, all the movies that we're going to get to are just ones that I can watch over and over and over again, and they never bore me. I never get tired of them. That's how good they are. And we start with The Running Man. Up next, we've got It Chapter 1. This movie was an absolute juggernaut when it came out. My theater, it was fucking insane for so long. So many people rolling through here, dealing with all the kids sneaking into it. This movie was a fucking phenomenon, and for good reason, because it is freaking incredible. It is a phenomenally well done movie. Equal parts creepy and scary and fun and funny and exciting. All the kids in this movie are phenomenal. Freaking the Skarsgård as Pennywise is fucking so good. That opening scene with the little boy on the yellow coat. When this came out, this was like, finally I'm getting that adaptation of the book, and they're doing it right. This is fucking capturing the spirit of that book so well. And I was so excited for Chapter 2. And even though Chapter 2 still left us with a little sour taste, wanting a little more out of it, can never take away from the absolute powerhouse performer that It Chapter 1 was. We're kicking off the top 5 with a movie that probably would be a lot of people's number 1. And I know it's probably gonna drive a few people crazy that it's only my number 5th, but hey, all 5 of these are phenomenal. You could pick any one of these and make it your number 1, and I would be like, respect. I totally understand why you would make it. For me though, number 5 is The Shining. This is a great fucking movie. It's really good. All thanks to a performance by Jack Nicholson. He's fucking so good in this movie, so unhinged. The movie definitely does so well with its atmosphere and making it super creepy as possible. It loses a few points for me because The Shining is one of my favorite Stephen King books, and they change just a few too much for me, which leaves a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. But I try not to let that affect my enjoyment of this movie too much, and it really doesn't, because this movie is still really good on its own. Once you can separate it and be like, this is its own version of The Shining, this is not the book, this movie is a really good, phenomenal movie about one man's descent into madness. It's still really freaking good. It just doesn't hit the highs that the next 4 movies do for me personally. But I could understand why this would be somebody's number 1, why they would love this movie so much. It is truly something special. Dropping in at number 4 is Misery. This movie is just fucking so good. The book is really good too. I loved the book when I read it. I actually made sure to read it before I watched the movie. I was getting on a Stephen King kick, going through as much stuff as I could, and I had the movie. This is back when I just had the DVD. And I was like, I want to watch this movie, but fuck it, I should read the book first. So I read the book, I fucking loved the book, and I watched the movie, and I fucking loved the movie. They did such a good job adapting the book. It is, Kathy Bates was a fucking inspired choice to play this person. She absolutely knocks it out of the park, and the Oscar that she got for it is completely deserved. James Caan also is really freaking good in this movie. Both of them are just firing on all cylinders. It is just a powerhouse movie that if you haven't seen, you absolutely have to go and see it. Number 3 is Mike Flanagan's just jumping in again, and it's actually the sequel, the pseudo sequel to The Shining, Dr. Sleep. And I know what a lot of people are thinking. You like this more than The Shining? Yes, I do. I really, really, really do. I think this movie is masterfully done. I think this movie is an absolute masterclass in psychological thrillers and tension. It is fucking so good. Ewan McGregor is amazing as grown-up Danny Torrance dealing in this world. Rebecca Ferguson, one of my favorite actresses, is absolutely mesmerizing as Rose the Hat. This movie has just so much good tension just dripping off of it. The 3-hour director's cut, I fucking love. It's so good. This movie is just fantastic. I know a lot of people haven't seen it, that it flew in under the radar. If you're one of those people that haven't seen it, give this movie a shot. Watch it. It is freaking phenomenal. It is an epic continuation of both the book, Shining, and Dr. Sleep, and the movie, The Shining. It bridges both of those worlds so well done together. It is truly one-of-a-kind movie. It's freaking phenomenal. I remember when I saw it in theaters, I was absolutely blown away by it. It was easily one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations. Dropping in at number 2 is our second Frank Darabont adaptation, and that is, we've got our 2 copies here of The Green Mile. We got this cool little like old school steelbook. I don't have the new steelbook. I would really like it, but it sold out really quickly. And then we got the 4K that just came out a few weeks ago. This movie is incredible. It is so amazingly done. It is amazing how quickly it just flies through its runtime. It's over 3 hours, so for a movie to be over 3 hours but not feel like it is a true testament to how good that movie is. It just flies by, and I love its kind of like breezy episodic nature to it that just goes through you just have so many like bits and pieces to it that bring you along to that thrilling conclusion. It's just is one of a kind. Tom Hanks, everybody in the movie is fucking so good. Michael Clark Duncan, you got Michael Jeter, Sam Rockwell. Sam Rockwell is probably one of the best character actors in the game. Definitely top 5. He's up there with Gary Oldman and Daniel Day-Lewis and all them. Just a truly phenomenal character actor. There is so much good stuff. The evil guy Percy, who was on Lost, he played such a good sniveling worm. There's just Barry Peppers in it. There's so many good people in this movie, and they just help elevate that material and make this movie like not just one of the best Stephen King adaptations, but just one of the best movies ever made. It's freaking phenomenal. And if you haven't seen The Green Mile, you absolutely have to see The Green Mile. It is very true to the book too. They change very little from the book to the movie, and that is just an absolute beautiful thing. But there can only be one, and I'm sure most of you by this point know what it is. It is, of course, Frank Darabont's third and final Stephen King adaptation. Though it was the first adaptation of Stephen King's work that he ever did, it is the highest rated movie on IMDb. It is a movie that most people consider the greatest movie of all time. And it's The Shawshank Redemption. Now, greatest movie of all time, I don't know if it truly is deserving of that moniker, although if somebody was to make the argument, I wouldn't deny it for them. If they thought it was the greatest movie of all time, I would be like, that's a great fucking choice to choose. This movie is truly fantastic. It is a perfect movie about a man finding friendship inside a prison, a man wrongly accused of murdering his wife and her lover. He finds himself in Shawshank Prison, and it involves the people that he ends up befriending in it as en route to his ultimate escape from said prison. It is a wonderful movie. It's another one that's very episodic in nature, which just like kind of goes through the years of this man's time in prison and the people in it and what the idea of being incarcerated means unto these people as these years go by. It is a fucking just absolutely phenomenal movie. Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman are just so good in it. It has another stellar cast of just absolute supporting characters. Mr. Krabs is in it. I forget what his name is, Clancy Brown. It's just so much good stuff in this movie, and I can understand why it would be people's number one. I can understand why some people would say it's the best movie they've ever seen. It's the greatest of all time. I can understand why it is the highest rated movie on IMDb. It is just such an effortlessly enjoyable movie. And that's my list. There still are a few Stephen King movies for me to get to, but they are some of the lesser tier ones, so they weren't ones that I felt so much were lacking to have to see before making this video. Obviously, I've left out all of the TV adaptations because that is just too much shit to go into. There is too much stuff to watch. Maybe one day, but I have not watched nearly as much Stephen King TV as I have the Stephen King movies. But the beautiful thing about Stephen King is that there is always another adaptation around the corner, so I'm sure it will not be long until we get another one. And it's true, there won't be, because come September we are actually getting Salem's Lot, one of the first Stephen King book I ever read. It is fucking one of my favorite Stephen King books, so we might have to return to this list later this fall and see if that shakes up the rankings at all. Also, maybe we'll see, maybe I will catch more Stephen King movies, maybe I will decide to watch some Stephen King shows over the summer, and we can add the TV to this list and make it one gargantuan Stephen King anthology video. But that is a very far possibility into the future. We are not worrying about that right now. We are simply enjoying all that we did here tonight. If you haven't seen any of these movies, I implore you, go out and check them out. Even the shitty ones, just watch it. There's no better joy in life than watching a movie, be it a great movie, a good movie, a bad movie, whatever have you. We just love watching movies because that's what we do here at The Outpost. We watch movies. But until the next adventure, that will do it for all of us here at The Outpost. You have been you, I have been me. Welcome to the world of Stephen King, and until next time, adventure on.